press Control to crouch.
The Crouch Peak Podcast.
Alright guys, so in case you were unable to catch the ESL Pro League conference that happened just a couple weeks ago, don't worry, I'm here to give you a little breakdown. Honestly, some pretty good Counter-Strike, so if you're a demo watcher, I would recommend go back and watch some of those games. Not great, but certainly good. Seeing these teams ranked top 20, top 30, some outside top 50, some above 100. Definitely a healthy mix of teams ready to make the leap, or at least make that attempt to get into that legitimate Tier 1 play. Some of them trying to make a way for themselves in Tier 2, some of them just happy to be here. So there were certainly some exciting upsets here. Endpoint played all of their opponents close, certainly floating in that upset territory the whole way out. There were some other storylines in there. Mad Lions, for the lack of a better term, blowing their opportunity. Being up at the first qualifier match, losing that, and then entering the last qualifying match, or one of, and then ultimately losing and not qualifying at all. So certainly some good storylines in there. But most importantly for this episode, it's seeing the surging Extra Salt. They kicked that door down. So they blew that sucker off, qualified before everyone else, just to prove a point, just because they can. OC the whole way there was electric. He was the best player by far in the event. He's the best player in the qualifier series. He was just clearly the star on that team, shining once again. Extra Salt have been going crazy since they have rotated Floppy in. These guys have just absolutely been on another level. Right now, they're sitting at... They float around a 80% win rate, having only lost 2 series as of recording, nearly a month from one another. These guys are red hot. Floppy coming in as their number 2 guy was huge for them. Not to mention he's got a very unique something to him. I can't say what it is, maybe a flair, a swag, a steez to him. Very much gives me 2016 Stewie 2K vibes. Absolutely a rare talent. Floppy is a rare character in North American Counter-Strike. These guys, so they secure their place at the Pro League. So now we're looking at presumably 4 North American teams in Season 15, which starts March 2022, March 9th, I believe. So this is, of course, counting Extra Salt and Party Astronauts, both of which who qualified through their own different ways. Party Astronauts coming through the most recent Premier League season. And then, of course, the 2 partner teams in Liquid and Evil Geniuses. Now, I am making some assumptions of what these Liquid and EG rosters will look like, presumably based on the reports that have been published across various publications. It looks like Liquid have a good idea of what they're going to do for 2022. Not finalized, obviously. But then as far as Evil Geniuses is concerned, I have no clue what that 2022 rendition will look like. Right now, I don't think many people do, including Evil Geniuses. There's a lot of ways they can go. But, you know, following those reports on Liquid and then following the history of Evil Geniuses Counter-Strike, I'm just going to go with my gut feeling here and going to assume that Evil Geniuses stay North America here. So I want you to walk with me here. We have a 24-team list, 4 of them representing North America. For those who like accolades, that is technically the most NA teams we've ever had in a singular season of Pro League. That's very true. That is a fact. It's also factual that it is only the second time ever we'll have 4 teams in ESL Pro League in one season. Last time being May of 2017. Nearly 5 years from when Season 15 will be commencing. And we look back, and 3 of those 4 teams failed to make playoffs, C9, NRG, Optic. It's also worth noting those 3 teams not even in North American Counter-Strike in any capacity, which will only further what I'm talking about as we progress this conversation. So those 3 teams failed to make playoffs. All 3 teams are also top 15 at this point entering this event, and they failed to qualify. Liquid not inside the top 15. I believe on that top 20 teetering, 19 or 20. They make it, actually. Now, mind you, this is a Liquid squad with no NAF. He's actually on Optic at this time. And then they have a baby Twists. So, Elige is really carrying the workload here. So they make it out of playoffs. They get through the first round, and then they get taken out 2-0 by North. Elige ends the event top 5. Nobody else even sniffs the top 10. So personally, would chalk up that presence at the event as far as North America is concerned forgettable. I would consider that forgettable. So as of right now, we're walking in with a lot of unknowns with these 4 lineups. We don't know what EG will look like. We don't know how Liquid's going to turn out. And we're unsure of what kind of form any of these teams will come with come March 9th. So, we look at this monumental measurement of 4 teams here, second time ever, first time in 5 years. This should be a pretty big deal. Achieving that rare of an accolade should be excitable for the region, regardless of the league expansion. We look back at these last couple of months in North America and we compare them to the 8 to 10 months prior to those. It is certainly looking better than what it was. We appear to be in the early stages of healing, back to normalcy. However, I want to disagree with that notion. I want to challenge it, and I'm here to rethink the current standard of pro-level CS performance in North America. So bear with me here. Let's look back on the history of the scene. When was NA ever in a great state? Seriously, when? When was it ever great? Are we calling the few storybook moments across modern North American Counter-Strike a product of us being great? Or can we be a little realistic here? Can we admit that those were pockets of brilliance? Yes, I will admit that. But were we just playing interim champion? Were we just pretending? I say yes. So of course, I will back my claim up with some examples. Let's look at the 3 most notable peaks in modern North American Counter-Strike. We'll start with E-League Season 2, Optic. Everybody knows what happens at the end of that event. They beat Astralis in a pretty damn good best of 3. They lift that trophy. And prior to that, pretty okay at best results in every other big tournament. They go 5th and 6th at New York and the Pro League finals that season, I believe was 4 or 5. And then they win E-League. So good stuff after a pretty rocky tenure. And then within that month after winning E-League, they go, I believe, right above 500. They go last place at the E-League Major, which is, again, only a month later. And then Stan ends up leaving. Now, mind you, this is within a 30-day window. We see the absolute peak of this Optic team. 30 days later, we see the absolute floor. And then it immediately blows up. Immediately. Not sustainable in any capacity. Up next, we look at the historic 2018 E-League Cloud9 team. E-League's getting a lot of shouts in this episode, by the way. So it goes without saying how monumental that was in the history of modern and all of CS, actually. Without a doubt, truly a Cinderella story right in front of us. But it was well documented that they were not intending to be together long-term following the major. Less than 2 months later, they're toast. So we look at Liquid, the most recent, and it's the one that sits most memorable for me for a couple of reasons. So I like Liquid a lot. I like their loyalty to the scene. I like how they've handled themselves over the years. When I was going to events as a fan years back, that's who I rooted for. I was a Liquid fan. I'm a fan of Elige as a player as well. But this one stings. The one reason being I was there at IM Chicago after they washed Ents in the finals 3-0. They've already won the Grand Slam. They've already won Blast. They just win IM Chicago. They're just racking up trophies to the collection. Mind you, this is now 6 events in a row, spanning 8 weeks over 3 countries. So they're now in Chicago 5 weeks before the major, Starlight or Berlin. So it's the winner's press conference, and I simply ask them, do you have any fear you may have peaked with the major coming up after the player break? Twist quickly comes back with the headline, actually, that I ran with. I don't think we've peaked at all. That's the headline of the interview. So Elige follows up with that statement. We're just getting started. So he follows that up and he compares Grand Slam to the major. Of course, he didn't account for the fact that the Boogeyman Astralis was not at this most recent event, not at every Grand Slam event. And of course, he wasn't accounting for the fact that they were waiting to execute them in the top 8. So Liquid claws their way out of the pits of elimination through the Swiss rounds. They lose to Avangar. They lose to NRG. They barely make it through the elimination series. and they make it to playoffs and they just get beat down. I remember this like it was yesterday. I remember watching this pregame, and honestly, it felt like I was taking my pet to get put down. Every second closer to the start of the game, it was just another moment closer to the inevitable. There was no doubt in my mind Liquid was going to get squashed. And so with that squashing went with the memory of the Grand Slam Liquid and what was presumably the greatest iteration of North American Counter-Strike we've ever seen. So besides a couple of flashes in the pan in the history, North America has played second, third, fourth, fifth fiddle across the entire globe as far as regional rankings are concerned. Admitting that we're in an upswing is totally fine, but the notion that the scene is healing implies that we're going back to a status of health, which I'm not willing to admit. I'm not willing to admit that we are in a status of health ever. We were ever at that point. I don't recall a time where North America stood head and shoulders ahead of other regions like Europe, like the CIS region, like Brazil. Those guys have had pockets in time where they have consistently were able to stand head and shoulders above everybody, and we have yet to experience that. And I just don't want to admit that we're in a state of healing. I want to admit that we're in a state of growing beyond what we have ever seen and what we've known. I think that we need some leaders in this scene, and I want to push this thing forward. I think we need to work tirelessly across all aspects to raise the floor. We need to enter those first steps of hitting those new heights and achieve that status that we've never seen before. So I look around. We have fresh talent. We have new teams in the Pro League. We have exciting teams outside of the Pro League. We have potentially returning talent. It looks like we're getting ready for that. So let's allocate these resources the right way. Let's not be happy with just having one competent team. And let's get to that point. Let's rebuild this region greater than we've ever seen.